If you don't hear the drums the way you used to, then does that mean you feel more free to choose how you live? Or do you think choice is just illusion in the wake of fixed points in time?
As much as I'd love going into detail about how complicated those questions are, I will say this. No Time Lord has control over fixed points or what is or is not going to happen, going to become a fixed point.
So, Master, worth it or not, you had given a choice to Pinky. Do you think she will abandon you or not?
I don't know. Time Lords have a track record. The Doctor and I are the worst of the two. She should have killed me.
You're starting to resemble the Doctor. It's almost unheard of you for you to actually care about someone. Hey, Master, do you think she'll read it?
You act like I wasn't a hero before. What makes your assumptions of me on like uh, you act like I wasn't a hero before what you made your assumptions of me on. Like I could never love or be loved. I'm still a being of complex emotions, like love, sorrow, fear, and even self-loathing.
Do you have any insight as to how ponies hold things with their hooves?
Not a clue.
So, for the sake of those often seen, how are Applejack, Fluttershy, Pink Pie, Roman Dash, Rarity, Twilight Sparkle, Apple Bloom, Skidoo, Sweetie Belle?
Drunk and abusive, dead, 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 in a coma, suicidal, abused, disappeared with her sister. Is that all?
Boom! You are now an Alicorn Princess. Do what you will with that power. I'm just gonna hide there in my bunker.
No, 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 no. Ugh.
Why do you have sharp teeth exactly?
Long story short, the species I regenerated on is from a planet in the Horsehead Nebula that evolved eating meat and vegetables instead of just vegetables. Equines are omnivores.
When was the last time you saw the doctor? What happened to the doctor, Master?
You really don't want to know.
Do, 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 do. Do you have any weapons on board that piece of crap? That's me.
I have no idea who that is.
Oh, you done fucked up now. Why do you call Celestia and Luna your daughters?
Now that is a story worth telling. It all began shortly after I left off with Pinky, when my TARDIS was wrecked on the Isle of Eden and I was exploring the forest. Introducing my TARDIS, unlike the Hourglass, mine has an advanced AI and has a temper, so I'd advise you not to push her buttons. It took me a few hours, but I soon managed to cut the massive tree out of the hull of my ship, allowing the TARDIS to begin healing itself. A few hours later, I had a bright fire going hot, and an hour after that, I was eating well on one of the local wildlife, a large multi-headed beast with a brain the size of a walnut shared between all of them. The night went well, and then when morning broke, near the fire, I found two small sleeping forms. Both were covered in burrs, mud, and dirt, and were curled around each other. The larger one appeared to be female unicorn, the smaller one a female Pegasus. As I approached, the larger of the two lifted her head and looked at me, her eyes piercing mine, and I could see the exhaustion in them. I smiled at her and I nodded, indicating that I welcomed their presence. The look of relief on her face spoke volumes as she laid back down. I spent the next hour quietly gathering items for when they woke. Food, a bath, water, and some other materials I thought would make them more comfortable while they stayed near my camp. The notion of their potential use and something else I can't describe crossed my mind as I debated on putting them out of their misery. Soon the two awoke. Never had I seen two fillies eat so much so fast. After they had bathed, I could see the larger female was glistening white, her hair the color of bubblegum. The younger was the color of night, her mane and tail that of baby blanket blue. Both of them were, well, winged unicorns. I was amazed as they sat and talked with me. I learned that they had been orphaned for some time after the loss of their parents. As I listened, I saw the younger sister show great skill in magic, playing games with the leaves, bugs, and even trees that she brought to life. The older sister, of 6 years, was very wise and mature for her age. I offered them a place with me and quickly learned to regret it.
Oh.
They named me Professor after they found my library, and it fit just as well as any other name I could have made up to give them. I quickly learned they both were nothing like I had expected. Celestia was bossy, demanding, manipulative, and had a wanderlust that best fit a Time Lord. Luna was innocent, powerful, short-tempered, and destructive. I handled the situation like any good parent. The sisters plagued me to no end with worry. My solitude in my hiding spot quickly lost its luster when Luna used it to hide her new pets.
What? Okay.
All right. Are you on the next?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The months slowly burned away, leaving years in their place, and even those went for a decade. The fully grown sisters had calmed down a lot and grown into true beauties. I watched them as they learned to fly, as I repaired the hull on the TARDIS and repaired and improved the shields, a defense against the magical fields that permeated the universe. I walked into the console room and activated my engines, and cheered as they roared to life. And then my cloister bell began ringing once more. I rushed to the door and called my daughters inside. Then the explosion as a large rock struck the opposite side of the small island I had found myself on. The force threw Luna and Celestia into the TARDIS. And then the TARDIS, a few hundred feet from the middle of the island to the edge where waves lapped at the hull. Meaning the explosion had enough force to negate the temporal lock and throw the TARDIS. I needed to find out how. When I left the TARDIS and saw the amount of destruction the impact had caused, I was surprised. Looking back, I saw that the ocean waters were pouring off the edge of the island. Yes, edge as in it had been lifted into the air, hovering as a dark mist that sparkled with energy billowed from it. It took a few hours, but I made my way toward the impact point a few kilometers from where the TARDIS had landed, a mere 3 meters from falling over the side. What I saw when I arrived could only be comparable to the sight of a maelstrom formed by Charybdis, a Greek monster consisting of a large mouth, a bladder, and multiple flippers, and fins to aid in its swallowing large amounts of water, creating a whirlpool large enough to swallow entire fleets of ships. The waters were black and sparkled with the same energy as the mist before. Looking down into it, it looked exactly like the awe I felt when I looked into the untempered schism so many years ago. Laying at the halfway between the top and bottom of the vortex, 6 brightly lit stones circled around the edge, as if guiding the waters to swirl. Quickly, I made my way back to the TARDIS, and in doing so, sent my girls off to fetch the items, since they, with their wings, could be in and out without getting caught in the currents. Soon after the stones were removed, they faded to stone coloration, and the waters slowed until the vortex collapsed, settling the ocean surface. The island remained floating above the waters. We went back into the TARDIS, and I began studying the stones. Each new discovery I made over the next few decades had me baffled, amazed, and amused. The stones resonated with the magic energies of the Pony universe, and even stronger with the Huon energies and the care of the TARDIS itself. I had Luna and Celestia try various spells on the Ords, and their powers, amplified with the use of the stones, resonated with each of them, 3 each, and I didn't know why at the time. When I saw this, I felt pride and a sense of accomplishment as I set into motion a plan that would lead to several surprises for me. I taught them everything I knew about combat leadership, the things I learned from my time with the zebras and the earth ponies, and they learned everything I had to give. When their time came, I set them down and told them my plan. I told them to take the stones and cast a spell that would take them into the future, to where Discord roamed. I told them that the evil that had cast me here was too much for me. I told them that they needed to raise an army, to start a dissension in the ranks of the ponies, and to cast down the beast that ruled over them. Luna looked so sad when she heard that I was not able to join them immediately after their arrival. I had promised that I would come for them as soon as I could, even if it took me to the end of time. She smiled at that and leaned down, kissed my cheek, and said 2 words that stung worse than the pain of my regenerations. Bye, Dad. Celestia and Luna cast the spell, and in a flash the stones and my daughters were gone. I had sent them off to war, to die or to win. I spent the remaining time on repairs, and through the tear-filled eyes, I plotted my course and took off, the engines roaring to life as I prepared to make my way forward in time. What I didn't know at the time, alicorns have been woven into the mythos of Equestria since its conception, and since the race had died many years before magic had even begun to spread from the Isles of Magic, where I had landed. I had saved the 2 of the last of their race. Now I know what you're about to say. Later on, it was proven that alicorns can be created through ascension of higher magic focus or birth. The race genetics mutation which caused my daughter's birth in itself still presented the base of pony DNA. What I also didn't know was how my daughters would end up. My path overshot a few years after the first defeat of Discord. My girls had sealed the monster in stone. His corpse was placed on display for all to see in the gardens of the castle, established in the woods that I had passed through before, outside of Discord's control. The monsters he had created now hid in the woods, and my daughters kept them at bay using the elements of harmony, as they called the stones of power we had found so long ago. The story of Discord's defeat sang praises to my daughters as 2 angels, one wielding a sword of fire and darkness, and the other holding back attacks with a brilliant golden shield of light. Luna, using her mighty magic, struck down the beast, and Celestia, using her great wisdom, turned his flesh to rock that now stood outside the castle, reminding all of the freedom they now had. My daughters and I were reunited, and we celebrated like nothing had ever happened. Spending time with them, I saw how the war changed them. Celestia had taken the war to heart, grew as a leader, and was crowned queen over the 3 races, which she had denied, opting for the role of princess, and allowing other parties to govern in her place. With her having the final word in case of argument, and she used this power to rule justly. Luna had taken the children, their parents lost to the old war, and had led them to other areas, establishing colonies, like Fort Nayers, and what would later become Manhattan and Philadelphia, as they moved further away. This led to many skirmishes with the neighboring kingdom of the Griffins. Being carnivorous, they would pick off scouts and other ponies that had that led to direct conflicts for months on end until my daughters and I stepped in to end it. They talked, and I found a liking to the taste, and eventually a truce was made. Tastes like chicken. The Diamond Dogs were next, and they quickly found that with magic, the ponies more than outmatched them. So they retreated north towards Canada, leaving a vast amount of land open and free. The kingdom grew, expanded, and made allies in 2 decades. Equestria was considered a major player in power and resources. It started slowly, but again began to notice changes in Luna. Jealousy, rage, even twinges of hate and murder. I didn't know how or why, but I was losing my daughter. The angrier she got, the less of my little girl I saw in her, and the more of a threat she became. It grew and grew until one night. It happened so fast I couldn't stop it. Luna, my dear, sweet Luna. She was gone. I was woken up out of a dead sleep and found Luna standing over me. A blade, not the one she made with her elements, but a normal knife, pierced my chest, and I screamed in pain. She just barely missed hitting a vital organ. Celestia barged in and tackled her sister off of me, and in an instant the fight had begun. Magic spells were flying, and I could smell flesh and hear bones singeing and snapping from the force of the blows. Luna, or more rather the being that possessed her, fled in a rage. She engulfed all of Equestria and dreaded night like no other, selfish and desperate to claim it as her own. Celestia and I had no choice but to pursue her. Luna had Celestia pinned down, ready to deliver a final blow, until Celestia started to glow. The 6 orbs of the elements surrounded her, and in a single blow my Luna was gone, banished for millennia. But it was far from over. Celestia couldn't see it, but I could. The shimmering shadow like a presence hovering where the Luna had stood before her banishment. Discord. I roared in anger, and Celestia flinched as I threw myself past her and into the shadow, tackling it out of the window behind it. Covered in blood and shattered glass, I fell 50 feet, head first into the stone below, the shadow still pinned under me. I bounced a few times after I struck the ground. The impact bruised a few ribs and cracked others. Oh boy, did it hurt. I didn't have much time to recover before the shadow was on me, trying to force its way inside it like it had Luna. I could feel it inside of me, and then something strange happened. I screamed as it was expelled out of me in one forced shove. I was immune to its attempts at possession. I tackled the shadow and began forcing it back into me, possessing it myself, trying to act as a container for the evil that had cost me my daughter. I know it wouldn't stay in me, and I could feel my body rejecting it. I could hear the drums pounding away inside of my head. That is how I knew what he was. I ran into the forest and in one motion opened the TARDIS, got inside and closed it. I had it to seal it away somehow. It took me years to find a way, but I built a pocket dimension and locked it with the same mechanism that kept non-Time Lords from using the TARDIS. Only one of my kind could get in, and I tossed the shadow inside and locked it in. It couldn't get out, and I didn't want it to go back in. When I left, I felt relief like no other, until I got home. My few years had been 100 years, and Celestia, still feeling the pain of the banishment, left the old castle and moved to a mountaintop. When I arrived, she welcomed me wholly. She didn't speak with me much, for years, and I never understood why until I noticed she was cold to everyone. Celestia's heart was breaking, and I saw my little girl in pain, and I couldn't help her. After all, it was my fault. For days, I tried to think of a way to cheer her up. Gifts, impersonations, even making a fool of myself couldn't help her. When she didn't respond and when it seemed to be hopeless, I smiled and leapt to my feet. She needed something big, exciting, noisy, cheerful. She needed a party. I gathered all the sweets in the kingdom, decorated the castle ballroom, and invited everyone to the first grand galloping gala, dedicated to the memory of Princess Luna and in support of Princess Celestia. That night, ponies from all over gathered in fancy dress and talked and danced, and music was played and sweets were eaten, and Celestia began smiling, a happy, wonderful smile. It took a gathering in the cheer and love she felt from the ponies who had helped gain their independence from discord, and their descendants to make her remember her true nature. I was beaming with delight. My own happiness couldn't keep me from dancing around with the first pony in arm's reach. I danced and danced until I couldn't stand. I felt great relief until I smelled something, an odor that should not have existed and could only belong to him. He was here, the doctor, and he stank of lust and booze and hate. Then I saw him, and he saw me, and the smell of hate doubled. So I ran, ducked into the TARDIS, and left. It was really him, the doctor, my doctor. I was laughing like insanity itself had manifested inside of me. And I had to find him again. I had to see what happened to bring him here. I needed him.
Your cutie mark has drums, right? I know the reason why. Are you good at playing drums itself?
End page.